What are you doing in here? Never surprise a man in self-imposed in-home sheltering semi-quarantine like that. I hope you guys are well. I hope you are well, whoever you are individually, and I hope you all are well, you, my beloved students of RIT 201. Where I am right now is my house. It is 1:33 p.m. on Sunday, March 29th. I just wanted to say thank you for turning in your recent assignments, description of persons. I'll read those and I'll get back to you on those in the next 3 days. Glad to get those. I'm dangling out a little extra credit for you, a little learning that can go all the way toward getting 10 extra credit points if you find this document, which is on the it's in discussions. It's also found in its own folder in content, so you can find this document in two places. It's about participial phrases. Did you notice I learned how to flip images? Yeah, since last video. Now you can read what it says, the participial phrase. So participial phrases are just handy-dandy things to be able to incorporate in your writing. Don't use them too much. They're so good. They're so good, the temptation is to use them too much. This is another document that you'll find both in content and in the discussions area of D2L. This is the actual sentence. Bold-faced and underlined are two participial phrases. I'd like you to come up with 3 sentences of your own that you would write in imitation of this. You've done this imitation stuff before. This should be self-explanatory, but the other document is there for you to have a basic grasp of the participial phrase. It's a nice thing to have. It's another trick. I want to teach you as many tricks as I can that you can use in your writing, because it strengthens your writing. It makes you just more of a master. The master has many different tricks because sometimes a certain trick doesn't work with a certain crowd. They've already seen it. They're sophisticated. They're not going to go for those old tricks. So you need to have another one. Oh, they've seen that one too. Or this group over here, they've seen that one, but they've never seen this one. You need to be able to switch up what you're doing. It just makes your writing a lot nicer. Also, I wanted to check in with you. I know that many of you are probably, let's just be real, many of you are not reading this, but it's actually not a bad thing to be reading during the time of the coronavirus. I was just seeing that whatever the guy's name is, Fauci. You've seen Dr. Fauci. He's the guy in charge of the Agency of Allergic Infections and Diseases. He's been on the task force of President Trump for a while. He's a short little guy, super brain. He said that he expects somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 Americans will die from coronavirus. This has become something very significant in our lives in a lot of different ways, and if it's touched your life personally, I hope that you're okay, that recovery is in it for you or your family member, and if that wasn't the case, I'm sorry for what has happened. It's tough. It's a tough time, and I really do believe that if you take a look in this text, you're going to find a lot of comforting things. You'll find a lot of just a really, really smart human being, even though he uses, like I've said a million times, he uses language that some of you might find off-putting. That kind of tosses you out of the text. Too much God, too much this, too much Jesus, evil, guilt, sin. Just try to imagine those words in other terms. Try to substitute in your mind what is the word, what is the feeling, what is the experience that corresponds in your experience to what Augustine is talking about, because I think that you can find it. It's not a question of whether or not we're having the same experiences he does. So it's not a question of what kind of thing is he talking about, like his thing is so different from our thing. I think it's the same thing. He just uses different language for it. Try to find a list of corresponding terms if you are, one of those readers, and I sometimes am that reader who just I can't deal with how guilt-ridden and sinful he is about everything. But then when I start to think about the modern day equivalents of what he's going through, we have words for that. Stressed out, angst. We have bipolar disorder. We have post-traumatic stress disorder. We have depression, anxiety. We have a bunch of clinical words, and some of us tend to think that what's happening is a series of chemical misfirings and misabsorptions by improper amounts of chemical washes in our neuronal structure. It's all just a matter of the apparatus. The apparatus needs to be calibrated differently. And I'm not trying to mock pharmacological responses to pain and illness, because they work. They don't work 100%, and they also have side effects, but they do have potent impacts. But imagine a time in which none of that existed, in which science as we know it didn't really exist, although he uses the word science. What he had was this. What artists make their art out of is what is at hand, what is around in the time in which you live. What was around Augustine, where he grew up in North Africa, what was around him were a bunch of devout believers in the Christian faith, with the language, with the customs, with the mores, with the family constructions, with the entire society basically imbued with this language of Catholicism. How else could he describe his experience? But if you want to see someone really pushing the limits of what meaning means in all of these terms, if you really want to be engaged with someone who will go there with you, who will probably go further down the path that you're traveling than you will, Augustine's your man. On pages 126 to 128 in Book 6 of the Confessions, you will find chapter 11. And chapter 11 is this is as near as I can figure Augustine ever gets to writing what would be the equivalent of a daily writing page. You'll see what I mean if you take a look at Book 6, chapter 11, from pages 126 to 128 in the Confessions. I would love to go into that with you. I'd love to break out some sentences, but I'm afraid that many of you will not be interested. If you are interested and you would like to get some more content on Augustine or something else, please message me, send me an email, give me a suggestion. If I get several suggestions along the same lines, I'll do it. I mean, I'm practically in quarantine. Take good care.